You're watching the Batter Fans Network.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 54 of the Battered MLS Fans Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Granada, and alongside me, I got Mr. Will from MLS Moves. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, and it's a little weird, man, because we're used to doing these live shows, but this is going to be released tomorrow, so it's going to be a little different. But I'm excited to join you, man, and talk about some MLS. And Monterey actually just pulled one back, so it's 2-1 now.
There you go. You see, don't lose hope on the CONCACAF. All right, so Club World Cup, MLS wise, it's over. Inter Miami was the last hope, and they obviously bowed out against PSG. PSG probably could have put more than 4 on them. They took the foot off the gas. But all in all, I wanted to come on here and talk to you to see what you thought on whether you thought that this was a success or a failure for the MLS here in the tournament, because I think a lot of people had even Inter Miami as the 4th place team in the group. I don't think that they expected them to perform as well as they did in the group stage. So in my opinion, I thought that was a positive for the team and the league. What are your takes? Do you think the Club World Cup was a positive or a negative for the MLS?
Well, I think that it's kind of both. And here's why I say that. It was very good that Inter Miami made out of the group stage. It showed that, at least in a spurt, they have the quality to beat a Porto, tie with a Palmeiras, and an Al Ahly team.
Should have beat Palmeiras.
Should have beat Palmeiras. Obviously, this will lead into my next point about maybe an issue we have. But yes, they played very well. They were beating them 2-0 until the 80th minute, and then they scored 2 goals in 8 minutes. And then Al Ahly obviously is the best team in African history. You can't say that. You can't disrespect them. I heard a lot of people get mad when people were disrespecting them, saying Miami should have stomped them, but you can't. I mean, they're the best team in African history. You can't say that the Inter Miami should have beat them down or whatever. So that was good. They got out of the group stage. Those are good teams, right? Have to give them props. Mm-hmm. The problem is that you saw the deficiencies in Major League Soccer, and the reason why they lost to PSG. And I say, which we'll get into more about that game later, but Daniel, one of the biggest issues is I think you could start to see depth become an issue. They played all these games, and they played them pretty well up until the 4th match, when I think a lot of these old guys started to break down, and they just didn't have the legs to keep up with with PSG.
Do you want to touch on the Sounders or LAFC at all?
Yeah, we can touch on them too. Okay. Yes,
because I thought that Seattle I thought actually did better than I expected, honestly. Although they obviously didn't win any games, I thought that they performed better than I think most people. I know that you are out there saying that you're not a Sounders fan, but I think that a lot of people were getting on you on Twitter because you weren't giving them credit, because I thought that they performed better. And LAFC I thought was the most disappointing of the 3, because they scored at the very end of their last game. They lost to a team that most people, was it Tunis? I even forgot the name of that club that everybody thought that they should beat.
Yes.
And they lost. So I think LAFC was the most disappointing of all of the 3 teams.
Yes. Inter Miami was the most impressive. Seattle was the second most impressive. LAFC was the worst of the 3 teams.
By far.
So
that's what happens when you keep a coach that said that he's going to be out the door at the end of the season, and you decide to let him finish the year anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I don't and honestly too, and this is just, we'll touch on LAFC a little bit more in detail, but as far as Dolo, after what we saw with his performance, that would be the big reason of saying,
fireable offense.
Get out now, because get ahead of it, get someone else in here who cares, and try to have like a resurgence in the second half of the season, because they just lost Sunday too. They looked terrible against Vancouver. They lost against them. So, and Vancouver's missing 2 of their key players. So it's not like we're even seeing a full-fledged Vancouver team. But as far as Seattle, I'm not a big Seattle fan. But I will say, and give them credit, Seattle did very well compared to what expectations were going to be, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody thought they were going to lose 5-0.
Group of death.
No, group of death. Hardest group in the entire Club World Cup. It's not even close.
Nope.
So they exceeded expectations because the expectations were so low, right? The only thing you could do is beat expectations.
Right.
But you saw some deficiencies with them too. They don't have anybody who could score. And it's not because they couldn't get chances. In that Botafogo match, they had 23 shots, 15 shots on goal, and they could not find the back of the net except Christian Roldan had the own goal. It wasn't even anything spectacular, anything beautiful. It was ugly. It was hideous. But it just makes you think, if they had a true striker, what could have been? Could they have won that game? I think maybe they could have. I mean, Daniel, when you have 23 shots and 15 on goal, man, how the hell do you not score like at least 2 or 3 goals?
Right. No, and I get it.
Yeah. So Seattle, very impressive compared, who they were playing. And we'll get into Miami a little bit better, but they only lost to PSG 2-0. They played PSG actually pretty well. Now, people will say they were on cruise control PSG, but I didn't think they looked that bad against them. They weren't like just getting the doors blown off of them and looked like they didn't belong on the pitch. It was actually pretty respectful, like a respectable performance.
I thought PSG against Seattle looked like PSG in the second half against Inter Miami. Kind of on cruise control. We don't have to keep the foot on the gas. We already got the group if we win this game, and we'll move on. I didn't think that they were Yes, I got to give Seattle credit. I don't want to discount credit from Seattle, but no, I thought that PSG played Seattle like they played the second half against Inter Miami.
Yeah, and as far as LAFC had the worst performance. We talked about the coach, but the fact is okay, they played Chelsea. They lost 2-0. At first, on the surface, that looked like, okay, that's pretty good. But then Chelsea gets blown out by Flamengo 3-1, and you're like, oh, well, maybe Chelsea isn't as good as we thought they were. Like, that's not good, right? Yeah. And then, obviously, they played Tunis. That was by far, maybe outside the Miami PSG game, which we'll talk about later. But in the group stage, that was by far the worst performance in MLS in the group stage, by far.
Of the 9 MLS games in the group stage, that's the one that I think everybody had that's the MLS can get this one.
Yes. And some people were saying that's disrespectful to Tunis. They're a historical team in Africa as well, as like with like Al Ali is. But, MLS is not some just poverty league that has no talent at all. Like, they have a lot of good players, especially LAFC. Denny Bwanga is a really good player, Danny. And, he was non-existent for LAFC in this Club World Cup. He did nothing for this team. He was a big no-show. You can't have that as a DP, right?
No.
And it's not even that the most embarrassing part about that game was that they got smacked around, but Tunis didn't even look that good. Like, they didn't look like they were this world club that was just a giant. They looked kind of average, but they were still beating down LAFC. So that was the biggest disappointment. So the reason why I say it's a positive and a failure. Yes, an MLS team made it to the round of 16 when some big clubs didn't. But you also saw the weakness of the league when you finally got to the later part of the group stage and when you got to the round of 16.
So before the PSG game, I remember I wanted to have this show, and I was going to have just the topic of, is this good or bad for the MLS? Because I thought Inter Miami getting out of the group stage would almost tell Garber and all the decision makers up top, we did pretty well despite having these restrictions. We don't have to remove the restrictions. Because I felt like if they would have beat PSG, and it's a hypothetical world, they beat PSG, do they really feel forced to make these changes to these restrictions that everybody kind of wants loosened? I don't think so. So I thought that it might have been a bad thing that Inter Miami got out of the group, and if they would have somehow beat PSG, which I didn't expect them to, but if they would have done better, I thought that would be bad for the league, because I thought there was no chance that these restrictions get changed. Now, they got eliminated at PSG in the way that they did, and I know you thought that it was embarrassing, and we'll get into that because I didn't. But I thought that this overall was good for the MLS in the basis that you had a team get out of the group stage, and you also showed that you lack depth, so you can't just sit back and be like, okay, well, the salary cap is fine, and we can keep things as they are because we can compete with the best in the world. So that's where I'm at. I thought that this was overall a good tournament for the league.
Yeah, well, and see, that's the thing. It's like the group stage victory by Inter Miami on surface is good. You're like, okay, that's a huge accomplishment. But then, like, when you get more details and you're like, okay, the PSG game can kind of wipe it out a little bit, because that's the most recent memory we have. That's the last thing we saw was just that beating. And also, too, to my point, like you just said about the depth, they should have beat Palmeiras. They beat them. They were playing better than them. And then you know what the difference was, though? Palmeiras brought in very good quality subs in like the 70th minute, and that's how they were able to bounce back and beat a tired Miami team and score those 2 late goals. Paulinho came in the 70th minute and made an instant impact, scored the first goal. Think he gave an assist in the second goal. You could just tell there's a difference when they brought these players on.
I also think that Inter Miami, if they're fully healthy, they don't have. Obviously, they still don't have the depth that some of these other teams have. But if Yannick Bright is healthy, if Leon doesn't go down with an injury during the game, like I still think that they could hold off that 2-0 win. But Yannick Bright was already out with an injury. Redondo went down with cramps. And once those two aren't available, and then Segovia got subbed off earlier, the midfield is non-existent. So at that point, you're just absorbing the pressure. And unfortunately, it was enough for Palmeiras to put those two in late in the game. But I think that the depth, I understand. It's not at the caliber of everybody else. But if everybody was healthy, they would have performed better. They might have or should have won that game.
Yeah, but I guess my point is that yes, the depth will be better. They do have a lot of injuries, right? A lot of injuries, but there's still not that like Paulinho came off the bench for Palmeiras. He'd be starting for Inter Miami. He'd be a starting, probably be the second best player on the team for Inter Miami. They have guys that are coming off the bench who would be the best player on Inter Miami outside of Lionel Messi. That's the issue. And we're not even talking about a European giant. We're talking about a Brazilian team that a lot of people hopefully have more respect for now, because Brazil is very disrespected. Brazil is probably the fourth or fifth best league in the world, in my opinion.
It's better than League One, I'll tell you that.
It is. One great team does not make a great league. That's not how it works.
That's what you want the MLS to be.
That's what I want MLS to be. No, I want MLS to be like Brazil, where there's 8 or 9 good teams that are competing every year. That's what I want, because that's kind of how it is already. They can't spend as much as they want. But as far as MLS, especially I don't know if you want to get into this about the PSG game.
Yeah, go for it.
So I thought it was embarrassing because Miami played their worst match of the entire group. And I'm not saying they were going to win. I never thought Miami was going to win. I don't think you thought they were going to win. I don't think anybody thought they were going to win. It was the way they lost, though. This was the flattest, most uninspired, and they looked shook from the start of this game. They looked completely off kilter. And that was the most frustrating part, was that they didn't lose playing their best. They lost playing their worst. That is the reason why I thought it was embarrassing. This was not the same team we saw against Palmeiras. If this was the Palmeiras game, at least the first 70, 80 minutes, I think it could have been 2-0, maybe even 1-0 if they were lucky enough. But this team, that was not the same team. And that's why I think the depth is an issue, because Luis Suarez just played his 4th game in 12 days?
Yeah.
Messi played his 4th game.
12, but yeah.
Maybe 14 days, but still 4 games in 14 days is a lot of matches, especially for a 38-year-old La Tortuga, right? And obviously Messi, all these old guys, they're just playing so many games.
But first of all, I don't think it was embarrassing. I don't think it was embarrassing because PSG's been doing that to top teams all year long. So I don't think it's embarrassing. You kind of expected it. I think most people expected it. I think most people expected worse. Then again, I know PSG took their foot off the gas, but I think most people expected worse. So I didn't think it was that bad. There was an own goal in there. Boosie lost an inexplicable ball that led to a counterattack. And that first goal, that man just being completely unmarked, I thought the first 3 goals that Inter Miami let out were all self-inflicted wounds. That's on them. I wouldn't say it's embarrassing. And I think overall, the Inter Miami time in the Club World Cup was a positive, because I've seen a lot of talk after the PSG game about, Messi's playing with statues, that quote that's going around with Zlatan. And, he needs to be in a more competitive league. But right before the PSG game, everybody's like, oh, my God, Inter Miami is showing that the gap isn't as big as we thought. Oh, Inter Miami is beat a European team. That's a big deal. So everybody was giving Miami props right before the PSG game. Right after the PSG game, it all went away. All of a sudden, Messi needs to leave, and this is embarrassing. And I like to look at everything in a holistic view. And I thought that overall it was a good tournament, and PSG did what PSG does to a lot of people. If Miami plays against Botafogo, I think they end up looking better. Do they win? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But the fact that they ended up playing against the best club in the world, it's just tough luck.
Well, this is what I would say to that about not being embarrassed. First, they did beat Inter Milan almost a month ago 5-0 in the Champions League final. Okay? That's true. But in this tournament, they lost to Botafogo.
They beat Atletico 4-0.
They did beat Atletico, but Atletico also didn't make it out of the group. They didn't even make it over Botafogo. So they weren't even the second best team in the group.
They won 2 games.
But Botafogo beat PSG.
And Atletico beat Botafogo.
Yeah, but Botafogo beat PSG. So yes, they swapped a lot like losses and wins, but it's not like PSG is this unbeatable giant that no one even had a chance to beat. The only good game that PSG played in that group stage was the Atletico game. They didn't look that good against Seattle, which is a team that doesn't have as much talent as Inter Miami, and they lost.
I think we agree that they were on cruise control that game. That first half against PSG, they played a lot harder than they played that whole Seattle game. They were pressing Inter Miami from the jump. The very first kickoff, the whistle blew, and they sailed it right over the keeper, I think, to start a kick, so that they could start pressing them from the jump. That was the game plan. Press them, don't let them get to their own half. And they knew that they could do it. They knew that they could dominate, and that they went for it. They didn't do it against Seattle.
But here's the thing. So if they played the whole game against Seattle on cruise control, which I agree that they didn't probably beat them as bad as they could, but Seattle didn't look bad either. We can't disrespect Seattle completely. They didn't look terrible against them. If that's true, this whole second half is essentially the way Seattle played Miami. Why couldn't Miami find the back of the net? Why were they not able to score it? Miami has way more attacking talent than Seattle. Why were they not?
Stumbled all over himself.
Exactly.
Luis Suarez had
an embarrassing performance. He played terribly. That was not nearly as good as he looked against Palmeiras. Palmeiras is probably the best game he's had all season in MLS 2. He looked incredible against Palmeiras. He had an assist and the goal against Palmeiras. So I just think, and then also too, this is another thing we have to bring up. Look at the Al Hilal. They just beat Manchester City. Manchester City is entire roster. Oh, let's bring it into MLS terms. Manchester City's entire 26-man roster would be considered a DP in MLS. Their entire
absolutely.
Al Hilal maybe have 7 DPs. So a team with 7 DPs.
Al Hilal has a lot of big time players also.
Yeah, they have like 7. They have 7 guys who would be considered DP. 7 guys.
They literally just got rid of Neymar.
Yeah, they did, but they would still 7. They would probably have 7, maybe if we're being generous, 8 DPs. If we're bringing it in MLS terms. So a team with 8 DPs just beat. They didn't tie or look good against them. It's not like Manchester City gave them the best game they ever had, and Al Hilal just lost 2-0, and you're like, okay, Al Hilal didn't have the guys. We understand they're not going to beat Manchester City, but they played pretty well. No, they beat them 4-3. They scored 4 goals, and they beat Manchester City, who's a team that's worth $1 billion. And Monterrey just scored to tie the game up against Borussia Dortmund. That's incredible. 2-2. But my point is that the gap, the value of the teams are very significant between Al Hilal and Manchester City. Al Hilal spent a lot of money, Danny. They do, but they pay way too much. They pay more than what market value is because to get these guys to come to Saudi Arabia. And my whole point is Miami wasn't expected to win. Al Hilal was not expected to win, but they put up a performance that you could be proud of. Like, I don't think anybody's proud of the performance Miami put out. Like, even though
everybody's proud of it,
they're proud of they were proud of their performance against PSG.
Against PSG, or you mean the tournament in general?
No, PSG game. PSG game.
But you can't just focus in on that game. They're playing against the best club in the world.
I don't know if that is the best club in the world right now. What if they don't win the tournament? What if they don't win this tournament? Are they the best club in the world still?
And then the second best. Whoever beats them is the first, I guess. Real Madrid probably beat them in the semifinals, but PSG is right now. They won the Champions League. They are considered the best club in the world.
So that's a good point or a good transition to what I was wanting to ask you when we talked on the phone earlier. So we lost 4-0. You even acknowledged that they were on cruise control in the second half. They could have made it ugly. They could have won probably 6-7-0 if they really wanted to. They probably could have made it even more ugly.
I think if they opened it up more and they played the way they played in the first half, I think Miami could. I'm not saying they would. But would have had a better chance at a counter because Miami started being a little more vertical and a little more direct with their passes once they went down 4-0, which is why they got caught with those late 2 goals because they were pushing a little higher. But, they probably could have put up 6-7, yes.
Okay, so we both acknowledge that that's what would have happened most likely if PSG had tried. Correct. Would you say it was embarrassing if they lost 7-0?
Yes.
Okay. So we both acknowledge that probably would have happened if they tried. They did not try. I don't know if it was pity. They didn't want to embarrass Messi.
No, look, I'm not going to say that they didn't try. They just didn't press high anymore.
Not 100%.
When they had an opportunity to try to score, they went for it.
Yeah, but it wasn't the first half team. We'll acknowledge that.
No.
That was not the same style they were playing the first half.
No.
Okay. My whole point is that MLS is trying to be a better league. They're trying to be one of the top leagues in the world. Now, me and you could disagree on how they get there. That's fine. No issues there. Everybody's got their own idea of how to get there. But the problem is that when you're playing the world's best and you get embarrassed or not be able to score and look terrible, like 4 goals in the first half is that. I don't know if there's besides Auckland City, was there another team in this entire Club World Cup that gave up 4 goals in the first half?
I don't know when Atletico Madrid gave up those 4, but they gave up 4. I don't know if it was in the fourth half.
Two goals in the first half, 2 in the second half.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
So I think Inter Miami was the only team outside of Auckland City who gave up 4 or more goals in the first half.
Okay. Now, this is ultimately my point. And shout out to Fabian Branquel, because he put up a post where he said, oh, if they want to compete with the rest of the world, they have to lift these restrictions. Why do they care about competing with the rest of the world? Why is everybody obsessed with these 3 or 4 weeks in the summertime? I feel like they are worried about improving their league. They want to make this league competitive. I know you hate the parity, but they want to keep it to where there's still parity and teams still have a chance. Now, I am with you. I do think they need to loosen things up a little bit. I would love them to give us 6 DPs. Give us half the roster to be DPs. That's great. But I never think to myself, I want them to do this because I want to compete with the teams in Europe. That shouldn't be the thought process right now. The thought process should be improve this league within the league, keep the parity, but have better players come and play here. But the obsession that everybody has where this team needs to perform well against the top teams in the rest of the world. Oh, why? Why do we care about the rest of the world? Right now, let's try to improve this sport in this country, this league. Let's start beating the Mexican teams first before we worry about putting up a good game against PSG. Because when Fabian put if you want to compete with the teams, the top teams in the world, who said that that's what the MLS wants?
So you don't want to compete with the best. You don't want to be competing with the best in the world. You don't want to be the best in the world.
This sport, it's not going to be that for a very long time. Right now, they have to prioritize getting better in this country and possibly meeting Mexican teams. Once you consistently can win the Champions Cup, then maybe you start thinking about branching out, Copa Libertadores. Maybe then you can start thinking about competing against those teams in Europe. But no, at no point do I think oh, come on, man. Come on, 4 years from now, we need to be able to be a serious contender for the Club World Cup. Absolutely not. Who cares? Who cares if we're the top team in the Club World Cup 4 years from now? Let's try to win the Champions Cup first. Let's have the MLS team win that 3 or 4 years in a row. That would be nice. Let's get included into the Copa Libertadores like Liga MX teams were for a little while. See how we do there. But this whole we got to be one of the best teams in the world. No, I think that's unnecessary. I don't think that should be the game plan right now.
Quick history lesson, okay? MLS introduced TAM, targeted allocation money, in 2015. And the objective was to make the middle of the roster better because there was a huge difference between the DPs and the middle of the roster, other players. A huge difference quality-wise. Huge difference, okay? Mm-hmm. So they introduced TAM to try to help them compete against Liga MX. That was the goal of introducing that in 2015. They made incremental increases to that for about 5 or 6 years to try to add to it and have instead of having 5 or 6 decent players, have 8, 9, maybe even 10 decent players now, right? Okay, so that was 10 years ago. We've done that. They've also added 3 U22s each team, and they've changed it now to where you don't have to have a young DP anymore, which screwed Miami last year, right? You can have just 3 U22s. Okay, all these changes have made, Danny. How many Champions Leagues have we won in the last 10 years?
None. Well, one. Seattle.
One. So what they've done has not moved the needle enough for us to win the Champions Cup.
Absolutely. And that's why I said that I would like them to loosen up the restrictions. But the fact that everybody keeps phrasing it as we need to compete with the top teams in the world. No, we don't. We need to beat the top teams in this continent first. And to do that, you don't need to completely get rid of the salary cap.
No, I don't want to get rid of the salary cap. I don't want that at all. I'm just saying that Al Hilal's team is worth $150 million on transfer market. And I know some people don't really put a lot of stock on that, but it's just a good reference point to compare teams. They just beat a team that's worth $1 billion. I don't think you have to get rid of the salary cap to compete with some of these other teams. I don't think you have to do that.
$150 million is a crazy jump because at the moment our salary is was it 5.5
Well,
outside of the
that's not the
DPs?
salary. That's just what the team's worth, like with the transfer market. That's what the players are worth on that team. Yeah, just the value of the. I think their salaries are inflated, but they're paying 3 times what they're worth to get them to even come to Saudi Arabia.
I know.
Messi would have made 10 times more in Saudi Arabia.
No,
My whole point is that they punched above their weight and they were able to beat a giant, right?
But isn't it equivalent what you just said from Al Ali or Al Hilal, whatever?
Al Hilal, yeah.
Al Hilal in Man City, isn't that equivalent to what Inter Miami did with their small salary to Porto?
I don't think it is. The distance, the gap between Al Hilal and Man City is more significant than it is between Porto and Inter Miami. And here's another thing too, like Inter Miami's salary, I want to say, because it was just released, right? I think that their salary is like what they're paying all their players is around $50 million a year. Now Messi's making $21 million, Busquets making $8 million, so almost 30. Alba's making $6 million. So there's what $34 million quick math between 3 guys. How much better would it have been if Miami could spend $50 million throughout their roster, however they want, instead of just doing it like that?
Absolutely, no, and I don't disagree.
They're willing to spend that.
I disagree when people say that they want to compete with the rest of the world. I think that compete with Mexico first. The rest of the world thing, like that's way down the line. Compete in the continent first, and maybe you're not saying it, but a lot of people are saying just get rid of the restrictions. For example, Solana, I'm going to be on with him tomorrow morning, and we're going to talk about this because he just wants to get rid of the salary cap altogether.
It's not going to happen.
Ridiculous. It's not going to happen. I don't want it to happen.
I don't either. I don't want it. I don't want that to happen, but I just want the NFL has a salary cap. A lot of money, $280 million.
Yeah, but it's 55 players.
There's 55 players, but the NBA's salary cap is like what, 140 million now. And there's some parity. Like there's been a new team. There hasn't been
7 champions in 7 years.
Yeah, exactly. So like here's my whole point. You cannot force a team to spend. Teams are not, if they don't want to spend, they're not going to spend. There are teams in the NBA. There are teams in Europe. There's teams in South America. It doesn't matter where you're at, Danny. There's always going to be teams, sadly, I feel bad for their fans that don't want to spend money. Montreal doesn't spend any money. They don't have they have one true DP on their roster, and it's a hand-me-down from New England, Gironi. Okay? They're not going to win an MLS Cup right now, regardless of what the parity is. They're not going to win one. So even though there is this created parity, to help teams compete and try to win an MLS Cup, a team like Montreal is not going to win it anyway. A team like Colorado is not going to win it anyway. A team like Sporting Kansas City is not going to win it anyway. The parity in Major League Soccer that's different between Europe is the playoff system. If they had a playoff system in Europe, which they're not going to do, I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying if they had the top 5 or top six teams in Europe play in a tournament for the championship of like the EPL, I guarantee you they'd have a new winner every year. Because it's not guaranteed. It's a one-off. You could have a bad game, you lose, and then you go home. So I think that MLS's parity is the playoff system. There's 18 teams that make it. Anyone has a chance. It's completely wiping the slate clean when you start. That's how you get teams a chance to knock off a giant, in my opinion. I don't want to get rid of the salary cap, but I do want to have a higher salary cap. And here's what I want to do that I think you would like to get these cheap teams to compete. Have a salary cap floor so the teams have to spend a minimum.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And but if there was no salary cap, and again, it's weird that I say it, right? Because I root for Inter Miami. But if there was no salary cap last year, Inter Miami would have been loaded. They would have brought in a ton of players to play with Messi, and they would have taken smaller deals like Suarez did to come play. Also, you still had to pay him a lot, but a lot smaller than they would get from other teams. Yeah. But if they have that team, Atlanta probably doesn't eliminate them in the playoffs.
They don't. No.
And that's the parity that I'm talking about, is that when you have that David versus Goliath, but David has a punching chance. When you have a team that is spending so much more than the teams on the bottom, it's almost pointless. It's almost like PSG versus Inter Miami. You knew that it wasn't going to happen. And I like the gap not to be as big. And that's why I like the salary cap.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, when I talk to some of my friends about this, I don't think we want to see a Bayern Munich or, I think we probably would like to see a quality team like that in the league, a quality team like that, not necessarily just one. But I think what people want to see is even an Ajax or a Porto or a Palmeiras or a Flamengo, like a team of that quality in MLS, or several of them. Not necessarily someone that's like a wide gap. And also, too, like if we're being honest about Miami, which this is an MLS show, we're not just talking Miami, on this podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at Miami and I look at this team, and I'm, this is an outsider perspective, this team is not better than it was last year. It's not. And that's because the MLS rules force them to get rid of players because they can't re-sign. They don't have the financial capital. They had to get rid of Rojas. They had to get rid of Quintana. I mean, they could not keep these guys who were instrumental in their depth last year.
Marco Rojas, I'll give you. Diego Gomez was the other one, but we sold him for.
Yeah, that was a smart deal.
Yeah.
But
Rojas, I'll give you. But I think this team is better than last year.
I think Miami's team is better. It is. Defensively, but attacking wise, it's not.
No, but that's on the coach, and that's a whole nother story for another day.
But my point is too is like Messi. I did a live stream last night when we were talking about is Messi going to leave, and I said that Messi, this is based on what I've heard, is more tired than he's ever been in his entire career. Now a lot of that has to do with age because he's 38. You're obviously going to be more fatigued. You're going to be more exhausted. But another thing is his workload has increased, Danny. He's having to do more now than he's ever had to do because he don't have the talent around him that he's always had. So instead of having, a Xavi, an Iniesta, a David Villa, Zlatan, a Neymar, Prime Suarez, he's got all these guys where he has to put it in another gear to get any results and do certain things. And it makes, I think who's he relying on? Who does he have around him?
But who's he playing against?
Well, I mean,
in the MLS, when you talk about the TAM and how the disparity between the top players and the bottom players is wide, the worst players in the MLS are all defenders because they don't spend money on defenders very often. So the help isn't the best, but the defenders that he's playing against aren't the best either.
But they've struggled to score this year. I mean, you see the inconsistency. Velasco Segovia has been way too inconsistent. Yes, it could be the coach's formation. Either way, he's on the pitch. He's not performing consistently. He played good against Porto. He played like shit against Palmeiras. He did. He played terribly against Palmeiras. I don't think he was good at all. He had a lot of turnovers. He looked uncomfortable. I don't think he played that good against Palmeiras in the whole game. Or maybe I'm thinking the PSG game. No, it was the PSG game. Excuse me.
Yeah.
The PSG game, he looked terrible. But, I mean, I know the talent is obviously is a higher level, but he looked terrible. Okay. Tadio Allende, way too inconsistent. He's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He scored 3 goals in the first 3 games of the year. What's he done since then? How many goals does he have this year?
No, that I'll give you. He is consistent.
Yeah, that's not good enough. And then you have Suarez, who is completely taken a huge step back. He is not even last year was the last season Luis Suarez had in the tank. He looked incredible last year.
I agree. But with all that said, when you look at the rosters of every MLS team in this league, would you not say that Inter Miami probably has the best roster of any team in the league?
No, I don't. No.
Which one do you think is?
Well, I'll tell you this. Do they have the best DPs? Like, do they have a Denny Bouanga?
No,
do they have
I'm
a
talking about roster? Roster from top to bottom. I think that they have the best roster.
Okay. If you add Messi, obviously that gives you an advantage. But if we take that out and just talk about the supporting cast, right? Take off the best.
Right. Velasco Segovia. You have Noah Allen, which has looked great at center back. I think that they have the best roster from top to bottom. Maybe not the best coach, but they have the best roster. And even with that, people are doubting that they can win it all.
I think that Cincinnati has a really good roster, maybe the best roster in MLS. They look really good. And that's my whole point of what I'm trying to make is they don't have the best quality DPs around Messi that they could have. They have because they're limited.
Well, they only have one. Jordi Alba got bought down because he got signed that extension, so he restructured the deal.
Yeah, and Sergio Busquets is, and I know you agree with this, way overpaid. He's not worth 10 million, 9 million, whatever he's made.
He's not worth the DP spot, no.
He's not worth the DP spot. Probably never was, to be honest with you, but we know why he was signed. It's to help lure Messi here. And that's a problem. But, like, I know that if they had a little bit more financial freedom, not saying let it loose and just whatever they want to do, just like you said, maybe add a couple more DPs, maybe increase the cap a little bit, they could build a better team. But also, Miami doesn't have the best roster to me because their DPs are terrible outside of Messi. They're not good. They're not good enough. They have one of the worst other 2 DPs in the league.
Well, Busquets is the only other DP because Jordi Alba got restructured. But Jordi Alba, I thought
Jordi Alba was making $6 million this year.
No, he got restructured once he made his extension because he extended till 2027, was it? So that deal got restructured. But regardless, Jordi Alba, I think, is a great player, and I
he is a great player. He is, but
I think he's been playing well.
The point you made earlier, though, about the defenses being bad, he is good, especially in the attack. He had like 15 assists last year for Inter Miami.
14,
The problem is you can't have a fullback as a DP. And I'm not saying it's impossible, like it's against the rules. I'm saying it's not a smart tactic. You got to use that on the attackers. Why can't Inter Miami go get a 25, 26-year-old striker? Or who is the midfielder you said for the Colombian midfielder we were talking about? He plays for
Richard Rios?
Is that your guy? Yeah, Richard Rios.
Yeah, but now he's getting rumored to go to PSG apparently.
But you see what I'm saying? They like when Busquets leaves, are they just going to sign another Messi friend, or are they going to actually sign the best possible player they can sign as a DP?
I think when Busquets leaves, and again, I don't want to get into Miami heavy, but I think when Busquets leaves, which I think he leaves at the end of this year, is going to be a double pivot of Redondo and Bright, which might work out because Redondo's been kind of a ghost next to Busquets.
I agree with him. Yeah.
So all in all, Club World Cup success for the MLS, yes or no?
It's hard. It's a yes and no. I would say overall, slightly no. Slightly no. Like it's kind of like when I asked you about Tata Martino and you said you were on the fence. You were like, you could see either way. That's how I'm on the fence, but I would tilt slightly no just because of the PSG game.
I think if LAFC doesn't randomly qualify right before the start of the tournament and it's just Seattle and Inter Miami, I think it would have been a clear yes. I think LAFC was the point where I think that it made the league look a little worse because they should have won at least one of those games against Tunis.
Yes.
And I think if they're not there, Seattle holds their own in the group of death and Inter Miami gets out of the group. I think the MLS looks like a success, even with the PSG loss. So I think it was a success. And I don't think that they are going to pull the restrictions because of the results. Now, I do know that they have some type of meeting going on soon about that. So we'll see if anything changes. I doubt it, but I do hope that they do loosen up the reins a bit.
Yeah. So also too, I wanted to point this out that, LAFC, they did score against Flamengo and that was their only result they had was the draw, and they looked like they were going to win maybe for a second. Denny Bonga scored so late and then Flamengo like essentially tied up right after that to make it a draw.
Yeah.
So if it weren't for Miami in their group, which let's be honest, Inter Miami probably had the easiest of the three groups. I think they had the easiest of the three groups because Flamengo and Chelsea those are two pretty damn good teams. Probably better than Porto and Palmeiras and Flamengo are probably close, but Chelsea's definitely better than Porto.
I think because of Tunis, I always thought that LAFC had the easiest way out because I thought that they almost had a guaranteed win, and they just had to figure out how to draw against one of those teams. Because I remember I had an episode before the tournament started, and we had that conversation, and I thought that LAFC, just because of Tunis, had that because I thought Inter Miami was going to have an uphill battle against all three games. I think LAFC was favored in that game against Tunis.
Yeah, they were, but even still, that means they would have had to probably beat Flamengo or Chelsea in order to get or draw both of them though, because Inter Miami had to go. They had to go unbeaten to get out of their group. They had to get 2 draws and get a win to get out of their group.
But who thought that they would beat any of those teams? Everybody thought that maybe Al Ahly.
I thought they had a chance. I mean, I definitely thought they had a chance. But my whole point is that LAFC definitely had a hard group, a very hard group. 2 of the teams made it to the round of 16. Obviously, all the groups, but they actually look good. And Flamengo beat down Chelsea, and then Chelsea, they I don't want to say manhandled LAFC, but LAFC they couldn't score. Yeah. LAFC not being able to score until the third match was the embarrassing part. Seattle just never had a chance. I mean, they had the group of death. So 2 of our teams really didn't do very well. Now, like I said, Seattle gets a point because the group was hard, but let's be honest, they didn't do anything still. They just didn't look as bad as we thought they would look, but they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything miraculous. So that's why it's hard for me because 2/3 of our teams look like shit. And that doesn't look good on the league, in my opinion. The Brazilian league, all 4 of their teams look good. All 4 of their teams made it to the round of 16. 2 of their teams are making it to the round of 8.
So you don't give LAFC a pass, in which, again, I don't think if they're in the tournament, I think we're talking a lot more positive about the MLS. But you don't think they get a pass because they just randomly qualified for this tournament a couple days before?
No, because they knew that if they were being ran competently, they knew that this was a possibility. They knew back in I think March or February that they had a chance. They announced that they were going to be playing. So they should have known that, hey, there's a real chance we could make it to the Club World Cup. Now, if it was like a week before, then yeah, of course, it's kind of like, well, I guess we'll see what happens. That is another reason too, which we didn't even talk about, why I was disappointed too, because the only team to make a move was LAFC for this tournament. And it wasn't just about this tournament, but these 3 teams are not perfect. They have holes right now. All 3 of them do. They should have made moves that are not only going to improve their chances in the Club World Cup, but moves that would have improved their chances when MLS starts back up. So you could have done 2 birds, 1 stone with moves like that. Like Inter Miami are going to make moves, right? They're going to make moves this summer. Why didn't they try to speed that up and do that before this started?
Apparently that window they said was too small.
But how long have they known this is going to happen? They've known for.
Look, I'm with you, but I'm telling you what I've heard. They said that the window was too small and it made things very difficult to make happen in those 10 days.
Yes, but that's what they say. But I just think that's deflecting. They could have done something, right? Because Manchester City signed 6 players before this thing started. Now they have money, obviously. I'm not saying they're going to.
But that's different, though. Like when was it Solana? It's like, hey, but look, Real Madrid signed a player like Trent Alexander to come, but Trent Alexander wanted to play Real Madrid. Like nobody's thinking like, oh my God, Inter Miami, I got to be there for the Club World Cup. Like we have to convince players to come here and pay for less money. Like it's different.
It's a different tier of player.
And look, when a team like Man City and Real Madrid are getting players, they don't have to do a big sell job. It's like, yeah, I want to play for your club. But Inter Miami, 5 years old, 6 years old? We got Messi. Like that's the selling point right there. Like it's not as easy. Like everybody wants like, oh, but you guys should have brought somebody. But who? Was it Brian Rodriguez, the one that we were linked
what happened to that? I'm not saying that I wanted you guys to sign him, but why did that just go cold? Like what happened to that?
I don't know why it went cold, and that was the only thing that I saw was maybe plausible because he's the only one that probably had a visa that could go through on time.
Didn't need to with speed in the wing. I mean, that was, and that's the thing is like the Club World Cup is over with. For MLS teams, those rumors, my God, that was like what, a month ago? I mean, it had to have been a month ago that you were talking about that, and nothing, dead silent. Haven't heard another word about him coming to Inter Miami. So that's what I'm saying. It's like some of these things, and I know it's not completely easy for MLS to make all these moves, but come on, they're negotiating with people right now. Like they're going to make signings this summer, and they've already been talking to these guys. If they sign nobody, are they going to use that same excuse? Oh, we just didn't have time, or the guy wanted too much money. No, they're going to make signings, and it would have just been nice to see them maximize their roster before they came here. If Seattle had a striker, Danny, they would have scored a goal. Yes, they probably would have got a result. Like that's and they need a striker. You've watched them; they need a striker. They need a striker in MLS too. That's my problem. It's not short-sighted. It's something that they need long term.
But look, I think that MLS needs to figure out how to make this league more competitive within itself, attract more players, and compete in the continent. I just think that people that want them to compete against the top worlds in the top clubs in the world, that's way down the line. I don't think that we should be thinking about that right now. We should be happy when you get out of a group stage like this. That's a positive step forward, in my opinion. But competing with those teams, I think it's I don't know, out of hand.
Yeah, I just have high aspirations for this league. I want to see it be better. I don't want to be just better than Liga MX. I want to be better than that. And I don't necessarily say I'm going to be better than the Premier League. I'm not trying to do that. I just want to be better. I don't want to, like, if our goal is just to be better than Liga MX, then that's very short-sighted. Liga MX's goal is not just to be better than us and keep it that way. They're trying to be the best in North and South America.
Right, but there's a difference. In Liga MX, one, that's the most popular sport in the country. Two, they've been around for forever. Here, we're just trying to grow the popularity of this league within this country first.
Don't you do that with quality though?
Isn't
that why?
No, because and that goes back to the whole and this is a different discussion. That goes back to why I think the salary cap is important. Because if you start having teams like Colorado, like you said, they'll never compete, in Montreal, you're never going to grow new fan bases in those areas. Because if those teams aren't competing, they already don't like the sport. You're never going to get new fans. Like, you need those teams to compete to attract some people. Like, hey, this team has a chance this year. If you tell them, like, hey, by the way, Miami and LA and NYCFC and these teams in those big markets, they're always going to win. So, but come check us this new sport that you don't give a crap about. Come check it out so you can watch this team lose. That's not going to happen. To grow this sport in this country, you need to make sure that every team has some type of chance so you can keep attracting new fans, because you're not going to get new fans that don't like the sport.
But here's the thing too, you got to consider though. The MLS has more billionaire owners than any other soccer league in the world. And another thing too to consider is, yes, they do. In Colorado Rapids, do you know who owns them?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, the same guy who owns the LA Rams, the Arsenal, Colorado Avalanche, and the Denver Nuggets. It's Stan Kroenke. So that guy has money to spend just as much as New York City does. He has the money to spend as much as LA Galaxy does. He has as much money to spend what it would take to get.
So maybe he will.
He hasn't yet, though, in this MLS. He hasn't spent anywhere close, even when this. The problem is my biggest thing, and this is another discussion. My biggest thing is that these people are not going to spend no matter what. They're not going to. They're not spending right now. They're not maximizing the resources right now. So you can't hold a league back because of the people who don't want to move it forward. That's my biggest thing. You cannot hold it back for people who don't want to move it forward.
And everybody looks at the MLS as, look at these stadiums, they're half empty, and you're never going to fill them up if you open up the pocketbook to owners that will spend.
So if Barcelona was playing in MLS, you don't at any, let's just say they were playing Colorado at their stadium, you don't think anybody would show up to that game? And they're playing Colorado. You don't think anybody would show up to that game?
Yeah, Barcelona sell it out, yeah.
Yeah, well, if Inter Miami had a team that was the quality of Barcelona, you don't think people would show up to watch that game?
No, I don't.
Why?
If it has Messi on it, yes.
Yeah, well, they're in this scenario, they would have several stars. They would be able to spend what they want. They would be able to bring a Barcelona level squad or a Manchester City level squad.
If Barcelona played here in this league on a regular basis, no, it wouldn't sell out. Because Barcelona is a spectacle that doesn't come very often and they never get to see them, absolutely it'll sell out. It's the same way. Everybody's like, oh, look, these stadiums at the Hard Rock are half empty, but look, how come Real Madrid can come and sell out? Well, because nobody gets to see Real Madrid on a regular basis.
But it's also
the
only player they know is Messi. They don't know these players. They don't know who they're going to watch. The average fan doesn't know at Colorado, the team that they're playing's best player or the third best player, the fourth best player. They just don't have the marketability. They don't have the name recognition that a Barcelona team, a Madrid team, Atletico, they don't have that name recognition. But if you had the stars that people know, they're going to go watch them play. And that's why at Vancouver, Messi's his own thing, right? He's obviously a spectacle. Suarez is a spectacle. That's why when they played at BC Place in the second leg, or it was the first leg, I think, actually, the first game against Vancouver in the Champions Cup. The Champions Cup is notorious for bad attendance because they don't promote the tournament very well. That game was sold out. There was like 50,000 fans at that game to watch Vancouver versus Inter Miami. If you build a team that is big enough and has these star players, people want to go watch them play. Like, that is going to happen. So the thing, and this is my biggest point. Look, I don't want to get rid of the salary cap. Like I said, I don't want to get rid of it. But I'm just saying, don't hold the ambitious teams back because of the cellar dwellers. Don't hold them back. If you had a salary cap tomorrow of $50 million,
I think that would be great. I think that $50 million would be fair.
Yeah, you're not going to have a Bayern Munich in MLS because that's the most you can spend. You can't spend more than that. So that's my whole point is, like, we shouldn't just say, oh, well, we can't agree on no salary cap or salary cap. Okay, we'll just keep it the same, which I know that's not what you're saying, but that's what a lot of people do.
I think 50 million would be great. I think if they do something like 50 million, they just get rid of the DP rule altogether.
That'd be nice. That's what I'm saying. Imagine if they could get rid of the DP rule, 50 million. And what kind of team would Miami have? A better team right now if they had 50 million salary cap instead of any of the rules right now?
Yeah, I think so, because Messi takes up 20, and then Busquets takes up, what did you say, 10?
8 to 10.
Yeah.
But you probably wouldn't have him. You would have 30 million to build around Messi.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that would be great, but we'll see. In a couple of weeks, we'll find out. Huh?
The depth would be better too.
Oh, across the league. And again, I think that the restrictions, I thought last year was going to happen. Hopefully it happens this year. They need to do something. Give us 6 DPs, man. Give us half the starting roster to be DPs.
Danny, I'll tell you this right now. If they did 6 DPs, I'd be over the moon.
Yeah, they won't do it. You'll be lucky if you get a 4th. But if you give, or do 5, half the field players being the DPs, right? The goalkeepers, whatever, half the field players to be DPs. I think that is amazing, and then you can get the bigger names, and like you said, bigger stars possibly to come watch. But no, I don't think they should get rid of the salary cap, and that's a discussion that people keep having back and forth. And then if you want to stay on here for another hour, we can have about the whole pro rel. But we'll end it here. Will, thank you as always for coming on. If they haven't already, let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can follow me at MLS Moves on X and Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Have some interesting takes. Some people say I'm rage baiting, but I tweet everything that I believe. I'm always
you rage bait a little bit when it comes to
I tweet anything I say. I believe 100%. Whether you love it, you hate it. It's what I believe. You can also find me on MLS Moves on YouTube. We're getting closer to 8K subs. The Club World Cup's been very good, man. So make sure you subscribe to me. Check me out. I do MLS and USMNT content.
You know what? The first U.S. men's national team game I watched was this past weekend after MLS completely got taken out, because I completely forgot that tournament was even happening during the Club World Cup, to be honest with you. That was brutal that they had them happening simultaneously. All right, if you're listening on audio, we appreciate you listening all the way to the end. And if you're watching on YouTube, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll be back next week to talk a little recap and everything MLS after match day like 20 now, 21?
21,
so,
I think.
Yeah. So until the next one, have a good